go live. Ugh. And then,
Meeting
okay,
is now streaming live on Facebook.
okay, okay. So, um, okay, I see us on Facebook. Now I have to get back to Zoom.
Do you see something down in the bottom, down in your taskbar down there?
Lois, are you able to, you're not on text with Dan Baraball, are you? Anybody?
Text? I don't think I have his text.
Okay, he just texted me that he doesn't know how to get into the meeting.
Oh,
Oh, is he in the waiting room?
No, I've got the
Oh.
waiting room up here. He's
I
out
don't
of,
have.
I guess he doesn't have the numbers.
I
Did
can forward him the
tell him it
email.
was like February 3rd. I think February 3rd or 2nd is when I
Yeah, and I should have had the numbers in front of me and I don't.
I just sent him the email.
Okay, thank you. Oh, he just said he was in the wrong email. So we are live on Facebook right now. I am Kimberly N. I'm the president of Dunes-Calumet Audubon Society. And this is our monthly meeting. And if I pause a little bit, it's because I'm checking on participants who have to come through the waiting room. If you do or do not know this already, Zoom has had waiting rooms that you have to allow people in or some kind of authentication. And at the end of this month, they are going to be upping that so that every Zoom meeting has to have some kind of waiting room. So that means that the host has to constantly be watching the screen that tells us that people are waiting to come into our meeting. Our meetings are the third Thursday of every month, and until such time as we can meet in person in Porter County at the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore or Lake County at Gibson Woods Nature Preserve, we'll continue doing our little Zoom monthly meetings. And each third Thursday is followed by a Saturday bird walk. This weekend's bird walk, I believe, is going to Portage Lakefront Park, but
That's not what it said in the email. But
okay.
I think it said Maddie Gillespie again. Was that a mistake? Is Matt Kawasinski on?
Matt Gillespie is doing it this time because he switched with Julie Bonema. Yeah, I want to think they're going to Portage Lakefront with the possibility of doing a side trip. Gosh, I don't know why it's not coming to my mind.
Matt says.
Oh, Matt says correct. Okay, great. Yay. And then we'll have another monthly program in March, followed by another bird walk. And that information will be on Facebook and the website. And all of our bird walks, you have to pre-register because we are limited to the number of participants because of the COVID restrictions. So the other thing I wanted to mention too is that we do have these great, adorable Dunes-Calumet Audubon t-shirts for sale on our website. You can either arrange for pickup in Porter County or you can have it mailed to you. And there's a way to do that on the website itself. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in May 13th through the 16th at the Indiana Dunes Birding Festival, we will be selling native plants. This is one of Lois's unfavorites. No, I shouldn't say that. She likes it. It's just that she has a lot some of us don't have that many, and so may be
It's a
looking to
beautiful
buy
flower.
that and other beautiful native plants at our plant sale. And members, if you would like to help out for an hour or two, we are also offering a free plant to each of the volunteers for that. If you're interested, send us an email through the website or through Facebook, and we'll get back in touch with you. So let's see, we've got another one coming through the waiting room. I'll try and keep tabs on that. But I do want to introduce our presenter today. Libby Keyes was just recently elected to our board of directors when we had our elections in October. And we're very pleased to have her on our board, bringing all of her knowledge and experience. And she's been doing bird surveys out at the Flora Richardson Nature Preserve in LaPorte County for the past year. Myself and another, the secretary of Dunes-Calumet, Cookie Ferguson, went out there this year to check it out, and we got to go when there was no snow. So we did have quite a few number of birds, and it was very interesting landscape. Really enjoyed the walk, and it was a bit of a circular path, and I'm sure she'll tell us all about the different things out there. So that was a lot of fun. So without any further ado, I'm hoping that I can share my screen with Libby. I'm looking for that little, there it is, my little green click, and I'll let her take it from there. All set?
All right. Let's see, I think you clicked it, but I'm still getting host disabled. Oh, here we go.
How's that?
I'm seeing your screen. Can I?
Hang on.
You may have to make me a co-host.
Oh,
I'm just getting
technology.
I'm
is
just
so much
getting
fun
the
to-
host disabled screen sharing.
While you're
Okay.
doing that, there's a chat from Matt that says there are 2 spots left for this Saturday's field trip.
Exciting. Oh boy. Technology. Okay, let's see here. We're working on this.
Maybe, did you go into your settings?
Okay, we know there's a way to do this. We know.
Oh, that's just requesting.
There we go.
your
Here we
screen.
go. Okay, waiting for Libby to control the screen. What do you think, Libby?
I think I'm just controlling your screen.
Ah! Okay, where's our technology wizards, huh? I thought that I had done it before in the settings so that you could have a co-host, and now I don't see anything that tells me to give it to you, to let you be the to let you
If you
be
if you open participants on the bottom, you may be able to make me a co-host.
There we go. Yes.
All right.
I think it's coming along, people. Thank you so much for being so patient with us.
Can you see
Yes.
PowerPoint? All right. We'll get there in the end. All right. So with that, thanks for tuning in. Again, I'm Libby Keyes, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Flora Richardson Preserve. It's in LaPorte County. It's one of the newest additions to the Indiana Birding Trail. and I've been conducting bird surveys here for just about the past year. So I'm really excited to share what I've seen this past year, and if you decide to visit, what you might see as the seasons change. So this is just a quick little overview of what I'll be going through. I'll talk a little bit about the foundation and how that contributed to the forming of the preserve itself. I'll talk a little bit about why the preserve is so important. So some of its characteristics, a little bit of its geological history, which is really interesting. And then of course, I'll talk about the bird surveys, what a point count is, if you're not familiar, and why we chose this method, the goals of the surveys. And then I'll finish up by taking a look at how the bird community here is changing throughout the seasons and what you can expect to see if you take a visit. And of course, at the end, I'll take any questions, and you can also throw them in the chat, and I'll be sure to take a look at those at the end too. So Flora Richardson herself, she was a naturalist, and she was involved a lot in the early dunes conservation movement in the early 20th century. She and her husband, William, they had this vision to create an organization that would continue her legacy beyond herself, to help protect native dunes habitat in Indiana. And that led to the creation of the Flora Richardson Foundation in the late 50s. It was first known as the Richardson Wildlife Sanctuary, but they later changed the name of the foundation to reflect and honor the founder and its mission. It's a nonprofit organization, and they have goals to promote the study of natural history in the region, to conserve the biodiversity of the Indiana Dunes area, and to maintain and operate a natural area as a sanctuary. And it was in late 2015 that they achieved that last goal. So the foundation was able to purchase a 94-acre property in LaPorte County with the help of the Bicentennial Nature Trust grant from the Indiana DNR. And then later in 2017, they were able to purchase an additional 10-acre parcel of land with a donation from Save the Dunes. Which brings us to the preserve itself as it is today. It's a pretty decently sized area, 104 acres, and it's really significant in that it's pretty undisturbed and it has some really interesting features. Notably, it's on a glacial boundary, which we'll talk about in more detail on the next slide. And it also has some relatively intact and high quality forested areas in various stages of succession, especially older, more mature forests, which is really important for some of our breeding birds. There's some emergent wetlands that are fed by streams and seeps. There's also a natural spring, which can be viewed from one of the first boardwalks, which is really cool to see, especially in the winter. So far, I haven't seen it freezing. So it's really cool to view from the boardwalk. In the dead of winter, there's still flowing water and some green plants. So the birds still like to visit that area. There's close to 300 plant species that have been recorded here, some of them pretty rare, as well as, of course, a variety of fungi, insects, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. And it was in late 2019, 2020 that it was decided that a formal bird survey should be conducted. But before we talk about the bird surveys, I want to jump in and spend just a really quick little minute talking about the geological history of the area, because it's really interesting and it informs a lot of the really unique plant and animal life we see, not just in this preserve, this property, which is highlighted by the little star on this map, but all throughout the dunes area. So you can see the approximate location of the preserve itself is the little star. And you can see it's within the boundaries of what we call the Valparaiso Moraine. And it's that U shape from Wisconsin to Southwest Michigan in light green. That darker green inside that is actually the boundaries of Old Lake Chicago. And that Valparaiso Moraine was formed as a result of the southernmost advance of the most recent glaciation period. And during that time, there was a huge sheet of ice from what we call the Laurentide ice sheet that drifted south. And as it drifted south, it was grinding down bedrock and continuing to form the Great Lakes. And then thousands of years later, as it warmed up a little and the ice began to retreat, it was leaving behind these really vast depressions and ridges in the earth and these blocks of ice that would eventually melt into the Kettle Lakes. And this massive wall of deposited sand and rocks and boulders that was several hundred feet high. And that's our moraines. And this entire area, of course, is significant, but the visible geography of it becomes really obvious where it narrows on the eastern tail end of the U shape. And it's this really long geological history that really informs some of the unique plant and animal life we see today, of course, all throughout this area. And that brings us, of course, to the bird surveys. So I mentioned previously that, a wide variety of other species have been recorded here, more than 300 plant species. But until now, there wasn't a comprehensive data for bird species on this property. And one of the reasons that having information on bird communities is so valuable, that they're ecological indicators. And that's a species that can serve as a tool for measuring environmental changes over time. So birds as a group make really fantastic ecological indicators because we know so much about their biology, their life histories, or how they survive and reproduce. And they're found almost everywhere in every habitat. And they're also really easy to observe and study. So that combination of characteristics makes them really ideal for this goal, this role. And I bet a lot of you have contributed to things like Climate Watch, Feeder Watch, the Great Backyard Bird Count, which just happened, or even just submitted a list to eBird. So projects like those are using this like mass appeal of birds, their relative ease of detection and identification. So their status as indicators to gather really good data about larger environmental trends, things like maybe climate change. So in 2019, the foundation reached out to Indiana Audubon, and it was decided to complete a comprehensive year of bird surveys. And we decided to gather this data using a method called the point count method, which is a pretty commonly used bird survey method. So this involves monitoring at a series of set points for a prescribed amount of time. And the point location and the time that's spent can change depending on the size of the site, or even how dense the forest is, the vegetation. So for our site, 7 points were set about 200 meters apart, and that fit pretty well into the preserve area and also on existing trails, which was pretty important because of some of the more rare plant species. And each point is surveyed for 7 minutes. So at each point, I just record every bird I see or hear during that time. I also repeat the count 3 times a month, so I can survey within the 1st through the 10th, the 11th through the 20th, and the 21st through the 30th. And this helps us be sure that we're creating enough repetition that we're capturing the best data. And of course, I start the surveys at sunrise, and I don't schedule surveys when there's really heavy fog or rain or winds or any conditions that can interfere with bird activity or my ability to record the birds. And all of this ensures that the surveys are repeatable, that they're standardized, and that the data is in a usable form for any future surveys. So we have a few goals in completing these surveys. We wanted to provide a baseline of data for bird observations. We wanted to come up with a complete species list of the species that were found throughout the habitats on the property. And we also wanted to create a public eBird hotspot, not only for public viewing of data and for citizen science submission, but to hopefully encourage people to visit as well. So this data we're collecting benefits current and future stewardship work. It helps provide public database, and it creates a public record for visitors. And I haven't quite completed a year yet. We're coming up on that at the end of the month. And we actually decided to go ahead with a second year, which will help get a clearer picture of the data and the birds that are using the property, which is really exciting. But I'll go through some of the preliminary findings, some of the birds, and how some of our goals have panned out over this first year. So of course, our first goal is to provide a baseline of data. And you might be thinking, what's a baseline and why is it useful? So baseline data is really useful because it allows for comparisons. So baselines provide before information so that we can make comparisons after an event has occurred. So that can be something like a restoration, purposefully altering an environment, removing invasive species, installing a new path, so just basic property management, or even monitoring big picture events like climate change. All of those things affect bird communities, some for better and some for worse. So having a snapshot of what those communities looked like before the event allows us to determine how they were impacted by it. Like in this hypothetical community, before restoration, there's some invasive species present, like the sterling and the house sparrow, and maybe a few too many brown-headed cowbirds, which are native important species. but one that can increase with a little too much edge habitat or degraded habitat. And without knowing that, the community looked like this before the restoration, we wouldn't know that this hypothetical community was positively impacted by a restoration event. So baseline data can be really important. And that ties in with our second goal, which was to create a comprehensive species list for the preserve. And creating a list like this is the most basic way to describe a community. And it ties in with our last goal, but it's just a little more broad in general. A comprehensive long-term list like this is great because it not only tells you at a glance what species have been recorded at a site, but what species haven't. And sometimes there are species that are really common and expected. Sometimes there's rare and uncommon species. And sometimes there's a species that's been recorded that could be used to inform management practices at the site in the future. So of course, I mentioned we recently decided to complete another year of surveys to get a more complete picture. So I hope to keep adding to this list. And we're missing some expected species, things that I would have expected to see, maybe like the simmer tanager, some of the sparrows, like the white crowned sparrow or the fox sparrow. So I'm really excited in this next year to keep adding to this list myself and to also see what other people add to this list using our new eBird hotspot. Which of course was our final and third goal, to contribute and create this public eBird hotspot. Not only for community science submission of future sightings, but to encourage people to visit, especially as a part of the 21 and 21 Indiana Birding Trail event that's going on this year. So with that, let's take a look at some of the data, some of the birds we can expect to see as the seasons change. So one of the things that's kind of fun to look at is the top 10 species. Of course, there's no real surprises here. I see almost all of these every time I'm out there. And these numbers don't take into account things like sampling effort. These are just raw numbers, I think through the end of December or January. So not quite a full year, preliminary numbers. But even with an entire second year, I wouldn't expect these to change very much. After running the numbers, though, I was a little surprised to see brown-headed cowbird so high. I didn't feel like I was recording that many, so that was a little surprising. But this is a species that could tend to be recorded in higher numbers, maybe the smaller an area it is. There's a lot of neighborhood surrounding the site. So they do take advantage of that type of edge habitat. So maybe not that surprising, but it's always cool to see at the end what the numbers are. And as we go through the seasons, I'll be showing some of the notable species by using these bar charts from the illustrated checklist on eBird. So I threw this in here if you're not familiar with it. And these are really cool. You can navigate to this by using the hotspot page, and you just click on illustrated checklist. And you can do this for any hotspot on eBird. There's also the histograms under the bar chart section, which is very similar, but these are really great. They're updated constantly. So you can get an idea of not only what species are present and when, but how frequently they're seen. So that taller the bar is, the more they've been recorded. So this is really cool to use if you've never visited a site before. And with that, let's move on to checking out the seasons, what we can expect. Starting with spring, which is I'm sure the season we're all looking forward to right now. So some of our notable spring species. One of the species I had some really great encounters with this past spring is on the top left there, and that's the Louisiana water thrush. It was really active this past spring. It was doing a lot of singing. Of course, very difficult to get a good picture of, but really cool to see, especially along the small creek that runs through the property. Spring's also a great time to get really cool views of both of our kinglets, often with mixed flocks of other birds. Really active little guys here. And I also had some great encounters this past spring with the local pair of barred owls here. I've run into them a few times now, but this past spring, on one occasion, I was doing a survey, and about 5 minutes in, I turned around and didn't realize there was one sitting on a branch about 5 feet away from me at eye level. And of course, as soon as I lifted up my camera to take a picture, it flew away. But I did manage to snap a picture after it landed and started calling back and forth to its mate. So every once in a while I hear them calling or see them taking off from a branch. But they're there. You'll see them occasionally. And of course, I didn't include any bar charts on here for the warblers because I would probably need 3 slides for that. But this is a fantastic site for migrating warblers. I think part of the reason is because there's so much neighborhood surrounding this site. They get a little concentrated in this really dense forested area. So if you've never like been to an area for like a dawn chorus and you've never gone out like early spring at dawn to listen to all the birds singing, this is a great site for that. It's really, really cool. It can be difficult if you're trying to record all the birds and pick them apart, who's singing and who's jumping around up there in the treetop. But this is a really great site to experience that. And now, of course, we're focusing on birds, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the fantastic spring flowers here. These are just a few of the pictures I took this past spring. So starting at the top left, we have cutleaves toothwort, a large white trillium, a prairie trillium. Bottom left is a jack-in-the-pulpit, another trillium species coming up in the snow, and then American cancer root, which is a really cool parasitic plant. And it's one of 2 parasitic plants that I actually found pretty regularly on the property. The other starts to come up in the summer. It's more common in the early summer months. And that parasitic plant is on the top left there. It's ghost pipe or Indian plant. It's super common late spring, early summer on this property. And it's a really cool little plant. You know, as an aside, not a bird, but they're white because they don't have chlorophyll. They steal nutrients from other plants, mycelium in the earth. They're super cool. It's a really cool sight to see them. And I always say, if you're spending a lot of time looking up, look down once in a while. You might meet something other than a bird here. There's a lot going on, like a little American toad or a spring peeper, if your eyes are quick enough to see them. And the leaves are really well camouflaged, but it's always well worth looking down once in a while. But some of our notable spring summer species. These are our local breeding birds, especially those that need mature forest. This is a great site for those birds. So this is a fantastic site for like vireos, flycatchers, peewees. The wood thrush are really active here. There's often a really enthusiastic pair of house wrens at the boardwalk near the spring, which are fun to watch. This past summer, there was a pair of hooded warblers that I recorded singing pretty regularly out throughout the breeding season. So I'm hopeful that they might be breeding there, or at least thinking about it. And I hope to see them again this next year. This is also a really fantastic site for ovenbirds, that small ground nesting warbler with the incredibly loud song. And I had one really cool cowbird ovenbird experience late summer of last year. This property is just, I think up until I started surveying here, I hadn't really gotten good looks at an ovenbird. And for whatever reason, they were just incredibly active here, constantly out in the open. I snapped the shot of one building a nest. I listened to them defend their territories, collect nesting material, fight each other, fly at each other, do little funny defensive things. And they're just so loud. If you're not familiar with their call, they have that 2-note teacher, teacher, teacher call. In some points in the spring when I was surveying, it became difficult to hear other birds over them. They were so loud and territorial. And they're also ground nesting birds. They make little oven-shaped nests on the ground. And so late summer comes around, I start seeing fledglings and I'm watching parents feed babies. And at one point I recorded a pair of ovenbirds feeding a brown-headed cowbird fledgling. And of course they're parasitic. They lay their eggs in the nests of other birds. And, there's a whole host of this new strategies and that both, the host species and the cowbirds have to evolve to keep up with each other. And it's pretty cool, but I had never heard of them or really seen records of them parasitizing like a ground nesting species, like an ovenbird. So that was something that was really cool to see and record. And I don't necessarily hope to see it again, but it was a really cool thing to see. Which brings us to the fall. Fall is a really fantastic time at Flora Richardson, not just for the fall colors, but we begin to see the return of some of our migrants, which is always exciting. It's a great time to see the eastern bluebirds, which have been hanging around until pretty recently in pretty big groups. The Swainson's thrush are pretty common in the fall. There's some great patches of native plants with berries, so they really group up and you can watch them feeding. It's also a really great time to hear the Carolina wrens singing their really loud tea kettle song. In this past fall, of course, is when we saw some of our more uncommon eruption species like the pine siskin. And since this site has neighborhoods on both sides, I suspect there's feeders. There's a lot of cool flyovers from some of our eruption species. So that was pretty cool this past fall. And that brings us to the season I'm sure we're all a little sick of at this point, but winter. So winter, of course, we see some of our strictly wintering visitors, like the junco, but we see mostly our common species at this point, our year-round species. Things like the nuthatch, the tufted titmouse, even the local pair of pileated woodpeckers. It's a great time to visit during these months and get really great views of these guys without all the leaves on the tree. If you've done birding in really heavily forested areas, you might hear these guys. Probably more than half of my surveying and recording is done just by ear. So winter is a great time. You can actually see some of these birds instead of just recording calls. And it's also a really great time to visit after a fresh snow and take a look down again and look for tracks. So you'll probably see a lot from the local, coyote and raccoon and squirrel. But you might also find a few footprints from the local turkeys. I've recorded them a few times. I think only once or twice, but I see their prints pretty often. So they're around, they're difficult to find, but after a fresh snow, you can definitely find evidence of them. So, of course, if you'd like to visit in any season, highly recommend it. It's a really cool little spot. It's located off Highway 35 between Michigan City and LaPorte at this address, 5265 North Pawnee Trail. It can be a little difficult to find. It's nestled back inside this little neighborhood, but there are signs for it on 35 and inside the neighborhood that take you to a really nice little parking spot, a little gravel parking spot. It's great to visit any time of year, of course, but I highly recommend it during the spring. You can spend hours looking up and chasing warblers in the treetops, and of course, looking down at the diversity of, spring flowers as well. There's some really great trails here. Most of them are in a circle, which is always a nice benefit. And excitingly, there's a new trail being put in right off of the parking lot, and it's almost complete. And that should open up a whole new section of the preserve. And they're really accessible and well maintained, which is awesome. If you do visit, don't forget that the Richardson Preserve was added to the Indiana Birding Trail. So it counts towards that 21 and 21 challenge. And if you use eBird, don't forget to log your sightings, because I love to see what other people see and what I missed. And so I hope to see everyone out there, or see that everyone's visited. So with that, if there's any questions about the preserve or the birds or anything else, I'm happy to answer them.
Wonderful.
I see there's a question from Finn.
Mhm.
How are my recorded species lower than the total species? So I should have explained that. I breezed over that a little bit. There was two numbers on that slide. The top number was my number of recorded species, and then that lower number, I think, which was 108, was the eBird recorded species. So there's been a few that other people have seen on eBird that I haven't seen, which I will hopefully catch up to this next year and even that out a little. Oh, and yeah, that was answered.
That's okay. Thank you for going over that a second time. So the next question is, so which species have you not been able to find?
There's a couple warbler species. I think one of the ones that was recorded that I didn't record was like orange-crowned warbler, that somebody got twice that I just missed. I think I keep expecting to see like scarlet tanager, and summer tanager. There's tons of scarlet, no summer. Just like simple things. I look at every tree for a screech owl. There's got to be one there somewhere. Yeah, so just, some of the more common things. But.
Maybe they'll catch up with you this year. This will be the big
Yeah, hope
birding
so.
year over there. Well, and I agree with what you said about the trails being very nicely maintained. We had no problem going through it. And there's a couple of benches there. And I think the
Yeah.
parking lot, when we looked at it, looks like it holds like maybe 4 or 5 cars.
Yeah,
So,
it's a really fantastic little the property managers do a really great job. Like I've never run into like a fallen tree or anything. And even with, I'm not sure what it looks like now with all the snow, but even with the little bit of snow we had before when I went at the beginning of the month, you could still access the trail really well. They've,
how long do you think
cleared
that
a lot of it.
how long do you think the trail is actually?
Oh, gosh, 1 to 2 miles. It's pretty short. I'd say 2 is probably a high guess. But they're adding in that new trail, and I haven't checked that out yet. So yeah, they added a whole new loop in, and then a connection to the parking lot. So, and they might have even almost doubled what's there or close to
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I didn't really notice that when I was there, but I think we did see something that looked like, was not a place for us to go yet.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that I'm not sure that you really mentioned was the fact that there are some little bit different habitats in there. You talked about the mature forest,
Yeah.
and we had the wetlands in there. There's also some edge. It almost looked like an open area. I'm not sure what the plants were in the spring, summer, if it was more of like a prairie kind of an area, or that part has been rehabbed. Um,
Mm. I don't think
but
if there is, I don't have any points near that. But there is a lot of, um, I mean, it is very nearby a lot of other types of things. Like, if you look at the map, there's open areas around it, surrounding it, and even a little pond. Like often I'll record geese near the pond area and everything. Um, so it's nearby enough for me to record them, not necessarily like within the preserve. Um, but yeah, outside of the habitat, I think a lot of things get concentrated in this little area. But yeah, there is some little like I think you're probably meant like right after the boardwalk, that little
yes,
boardwalk. There's that little area. That's where I record a lot of sparrows. They like to hang out in there.
yeah, and just north of that, the the Richardson property, including on the map that you showed, is kind of an agricultural area.
Yeah,
And that's where I'm going to be staking out my nemesis species, the wild turkey, next time
they're
I go.
around. Yeah,
I'm always looking for those turkeys. So,
yeah.
are there any other? Oh, I see some more questions. Is
Just
this
dune and
dune and
swale.
swale? Well, I think you kind of answered that when you talked about
Yeah,
the glacier.
I
So,
wouldn't necessarily classify as. I think it's too high up on the moraine to classify it as like dune and swale. Um, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily classify it as dune and swale habitat.
yeah, I think we see more of the dune and swale towards Lake County because if you remember the map showed more of an extension from the current Lake Michigan down to where the moraine makes that U shape.
Yeah.
And so that dune and swale kind of picks up it kind of in Porter County and then into Lake County and then part of Illinois. Um, is if someone is, let's see, is there another place to bird nearby?
That is a great
Hmm.
question, which off the top of my head, I don't have a great answer for.
Well, I'm thinking about a
So
couple
if
things. You
somebody
could
else
go,
can jump in.
yes, you could go north, and I think you could hit like some other Shirley Hines land trust properties like Barker Woods.
Oh, Ambler Flatwoods is nearby.
Yeah. And then you could go south and go down to Kingsbury
Yeah.
and connect there. So it's also not that far from, I'm thinking if you continue south on 35, you'll get to those little kettle lakes,
Yes, yeah.
which are like Pine Lake and Clear Lake and No Name Lake. um, that has a lot of waterfowl uh, throughout, I think most of the year until it freezes over. I'm not sure if they get totally frozen or not. Um, but yeah, part of that whole glacier structure, those kettle lakes down there too.
Yeah.
So eBird is a good place to check to find some of those things.
Yeah, it comes up in eBird just as Richardson Preserve. Not as like Flora Richardson Preserve as if you're searching for it.
Yeah, I was able to put the address in and maps took me right there.
Yeah.
Yes, and the comment made that Pinhook Bog is nearby. Red Mill, which is part of LaPorte County Parks, is over that way also. There's some other LaPorte County parks too when you go closer towards 421. So there was a question about what fungi you are seeing there. That's not
Wrong
really
type
a
of
birding
presentation.
question, but
I mean, I can tell you there's a huge diversity. Pete Avis, who used to work at Indiana University Northwest, was like the fungi guy. And he did a lot of the surveys, like just not official surveys, but he did a lot of work there, seeing what kind of diversity was there. And I know he didn't exhaust, you know, he didn't reach a limit to it. There's a lot of, every time I take pictures and put them in iNaturalist, and that's about my limit on identifying fungi. There's a lot there and they're cool, but that's I couldn't tell you, you know.
at the
I
parking lot
encourage
there
people
is
to
a
go check it out.
yes, and there is a kiosk that shows you the map and everything at the parking lot, which was really
Yeah,
nice to see.
yeah.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to going back there again in the spring and catching some more
Yeah.
birds. Are there any other questions
Libby?
for Libby?
Yes.
Libby, over on Facebook, Julie Bonema is asking, how long are the trails there?
Oh, I think I said 1 to 2 miles, and 2 miles is being pretty generous. But that's the original trails. They're adding this whole new section that I think I haven't walked them yet, but might almost double it. So.
Are you going to expand your survey to include the new trail?
So we decided not to, just because we want to keep them standardized, and just time constraints doing surveys and everything. But that's not to say that I won't take that trail back to the parking lot and do just a little side eBird list and see what's going on, because it's a little bit of a different habitat. It follows a different side of the stream, so I think there could be interesting stuff over there.
Great, looking forward to it. Are there any other questions for Libby and the Flora Richardson Preserve in LaPorte County? Oh, somebody mentioned they think it's about 1.25 miles. Yeah, I would tell you how long I was out there, but I happen to be a very slow walker and birder. So I'm
You
fortunate
don't
that,
miss anything that way.
well, I don't know about that, but I'm also an unlucky birder. So that's why I'm always looking for wild turkeys. You would think they're kind of slow. I'd see them, but not
They're there, and
necessarily.
I've only seen one twice, so
Okay,
you
that makes me feel better. Thank you.
know.
All right, what else do we have? Is this a busy property in terms of usage?
No, not at all. I think, again, almost a year of doing surveys 3 times a month. I've only, and again, I'm doing it at dawn, so that's very early in the day, but I've only ever come out from a survey and seen another car in the parking lot 1 time. So I'm sure it's busier later in the day. But yeah, not very busy at all. I think I've only ever run into somebody else. Occasionally I'll run into the property managers, very friendly, awesome people. Don't run into other people very often. So
I suspect there might be maybe a neighborhood folks that might use the property. We did come across some tracks of someone else that had been there and they came from a different location.
okay.
They started from a different area, not from the parking lot.
Yeah.
And that's
The
very
property
common for-
managers do live on site. So it's
Okay.
possible that was
Could have
them
been
walking
them.
through. Yeah.
Yeah, with the amount of neighborhoods that, the neighborhood around there, that's a possibility. I know at one point along the trail, I could look north and see Highway 20.
Mhm.
And just for you carnivores, there is East Side Meat Market. I picked that out from across the agricultural field. So yeah, so it's a nice little hidden gem.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I don't think that's why there's been too many people there. I
It's
don't know
very
what,
hidden back in the neighborhood.
yeah, I don't what you've been there in the summer. What are the bugs like?
Not
With all
bad.
that
Not
wind?
as bad as I expected them to be. I mean, if there's absolutely no breeze, of course, sometimes it gets a little bad. But as long as you're paying attention to ticks as you come out and everything, the usual stuff. The mosquitoes and stuff definitely aren't as bad as I expected them to be in a place like this. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, the one view where there is actually a little bench, um, because of she talked about the glacier and it being the moraine, you can look down in the ravine and see some of the water down there. Was really very, very nice. It
I
would be
take
a
a lot of
great place just,
panoramic shots there.
yeah, a great place just to sit
Yeah.
and ponder.
Yeah.
So, okay, I don't think we have any other questions, but
Can I
this has
just
been,
ask one question?
yes, you can,
Um,
certainly.
Does the path follow the stream? Like if I wanted to go looking for dragonflies, I would be in a environment on the path?
So the original path doesn't. It crosses it a few times.
Okay,
So you
that's
could
good enough.
definitely access it. The
Yeah.
new path does.
Okay,
The new path does follow the stream for quite a ways. So
okay,
yeah, you would be able to access it quite a bit.
okay.
Could be some new dragonfly species.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would love to know about it too if you found
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. So she'll be looking down and up and
Yes.
all around.
Yes, we spend a lot of time, I'm guilty of it, staring straight up. Look
Yeah.
down once in a while because you never know. I've almost stepped on like turtles and stuff before. You just look down once in a while.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not allowed to really look up unless I stop moving. Um, just the nature of me, falling over my own 2 feet. So I try to watch that.
Yeah.
Is anybody doing frog surveys out there? I heard that
I
there's
don't think so, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I do not think so.
Yeah, I heard that there's some groups that are spearheading some frog surveys this spring. So
Yeah, I can say they would, almost 100% be into that and be interested in it.
okay. One more thing to add to our list of things to do. So. A few years back,
Well,
I
this was
did
very
get
nice, Libby. Thank you.
I did
Yeah.
get stuck by some frog sounds that I kept looking for the bird and realized then it was a frog.
Yeah.
So tricksters
Been
out there.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions or comments about this great presentation about a place to go birding, part of the 21 and 21 Indiana Birding Trail Challenge? Lots of great places. And don't forget, there are still 2 spots left on our bird walk for Saturday. Go ahead and check our website for the link on how to register for that. And if you have any other questions, you can always send them to our email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So I think that's it then. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank
And
you, Libby.
we'll
You're very
see you
welcome. Thanks.
next month. Put my glasses on so I can see what we have to do here.